What's up, girlfriends? Sorry, I'm a little late. I always say like, oh, it's just gonna take me an hour to like take a shower and get ready. But then I'm like, oh, I should put some coconut oil on and like, oh, I should make some sugar scrub, and it ends up being an hour, so I'm sorry I'm late. Hey ladies. I'm just gonna wait for everyone to join. It usually takes like just a couple minutes, and then you guys can ask whatever questions you want. I was just saying how a lot of people ask me about my skincare. Good morning, Wendy. And I am like the laziest person on the planet. I love to like DIY things in the kitchen, and so I very regularly just rub coconut oil all over my whole body before I get in the shower. That's the trick, is if you don't want to be oily and you don't want coconut oil to clog your pores, rub it all over your body before you get in the shower, and then the hot shower like really washes away the excess and helps it absorb into the skin. And then I put shea butter on my face and my body afterwards, and boom, you're moisturized. 2 ingredients, that's it. What process do you walk your clients through to discover what foods do and don't work for them? Yeah, so this is kind of, it's not like a process where I'm like, okay, you start here and then you move here. Usually what happens is most people coming to me are on some sort of restrictive diet. I can't remember the last time someone didn't come to me like not on a diet. And so I kind of have to take like where they are and like see their issues and then say like, I wonder if, we can try this. And of course I like take what they're comfortable with into consideration. So some people are just not comfortable integrating dairy into their diet yet, or it's not working for them. Do I say like, you should eat dairy anyways? No, we say, okay, let's try again in a month. I usually stick to the basic like elimination style diets, but I take a different approach. Like I'm looking for things that are the least inflammatory to your gut. So I'm looking for the most easily absorbable and digestible things. That's going to include meats, broths, eggs, sometimes dairy if it's tolerated. And then, so like easy to digest proteins, not plant proteins. And then I do starchy root vegetables that are really well cooked. And if you're going to do like leafy greens or cruciferous vegetables, they need to be very, very well cooked at first. And that's kind of where I start you as a template. Now you can eat as much of that as you want. You can eat as much ripe fruits as you want. Like I really want you to feel like there's an abundance of food available to you. There's no limits. It's just more about eating foods that are going to be like really easily digested and absorbed. Some people come to me so gut impaired that I'll actually put them on like a juice cleanse, or not specifically a juice cleanse, but a modified juice cleanse or juice fast, just for a while to give their digestive system a break. That includes ripe fruit, juices, bone broth, and sometimes collagen if it can be digested well. So it really depends on the state of someone's gut that's coming to me. Some people have very impaired digestion, so I'm not going to be like, okay, let's integrate dairy and grains and let's see how you do. Like I have to really it's going to take months to like introduce foods, first heal the gut, then introduce foods, get them digesting well. So, for me, it's always about experimentation, but a lot of times if someone's very impaired, you have to start with very easily digestible foods. While you're eating very easily digestible and assimilated foods, you're also doing gut work. So I usually run a GI map on them, see where their gut's at. Sometimes we'll run a SIBO test, a Broth test. Sometimes we will run an organic acids test. We'll just kind of see where their body is at, and then we'll build it from the ground up. And then after we've done a bit of healing, maybe like 4 weeks to 8 weeks, we'll try to integrate a food and see how that goes. But, I'm very intuitive with every single person, because if I came up with like a cookie cutter strategy, it just wouldn't work. Like, I see a lot of practitioners just cookie cuttering every single person, like, okay, let's run a food allergies test and then let's, we'll cut out those foods. And I'm like, food allergies are bunk, dude. Like, your body tells you what you're not digesting more than a test does. And a lot of times food allergy tests, just because you have an antibody against something doesn't mean you're reacting to it constantly. Just because you have a marker for a specific disease doesn't mean that you are fighting that disease like all the time. It just means that at one point your body, your immune system came up with an antibody against that thing. And it's the same thing for foods. And so it's like one of those things where I believe that the body trumps any kind of test, and I don't really see food allergy tests being that accurate for most people. And so we really have to go through this process where we create a baseline of very easy to digest foods, and that's different for everyone. Like if someone has small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, for example, like they can't really digest a lot of fruits or vegetables. Their FODMAP's ability to digest certain fibers is like super low. And so, for that person, a diet that's devoid of most fibrous vegetables is a great thing for them. But is that a great thing for someone who can digest fiber? No. So again, like I said, it's just somewhat, it's very different for every single person, and it really depends on the state of the person's digestive system, hormonal function, their habits, just so many factors. Even my health histories go all the way back to birth. Were you breastfed? Were you cesarean born? Or were you vaginally born? How many rounds of antibiotics did you get in the first 3 years of your life? And those are questions that need to be asked, because that tells me how your gut was set up from the very beginning. And so, of course, depending on your history is going to be has to happen. Sorry, my Wi-Fi cut out. So sometimes people's guts are so impaired that you got to take them back to babyhood, newborn babyhood. And if they weren't fed what they needed to be fed from being a newborn, we're going to start all over again. And we're going to start from the very beginning. Eat very easy digest, almost like baby foods, mashed sweet potatoes with butter and collagen, and just very think of baby foods, what you would feed a baby. And that is what we sometimes have to do. So it just kind of depends. Sorry, my Wi-Fi is sucking today. But yeah, that's for a diet. It's very dependent on the person. How often do you recommend using magnesium oil on liver, and can you explain the pulse part of daily monitoring? Yeah, so I recommend using magnesium oil nightly if you're not using a magnesium supplement. I prefer magnesium topically just because it's less stressful on the digestive system. But it's one of those things that everyone absorbs things differently, but usually applying magnesium oil nightly is a very good kind of habit to have. And then the pulse part of the daily monitoring. So your pulse is a great indicator of where your stress levels are at. You don't want your pulse to be too low, right? And you don't want your pulse to be too high. A low pulse is a sign of a slow metabolism, slow oxygenation, slow nutrients, right? You want your blood pumping through your body because that's what's bringing nutrients to the surface of the skin, to the cells, etc. So when you wake up in the morning, you want it in that kind of sweet spot between 75 and 85. You don't want it high because that shows that your body's stressed, your heart's pumping fast, which means that there's stress hormones present, but you don't want it super, super low either, to the point where things are super slow, because that also shows a low metabolic function. And so, using your pulse and your temperatures is very helpful, because sometimes temperatures lie. Remember how I said when stress hormones are high, your temperatures can be artificially high, but then when you see that your pulse is low, then okay, so maybe my metabolic function is low, but my temperatures are being artificially raised by stress hormones, or vice versa. You might see low temps but high pulse, and so that maybe stress hormones are suppressing your individual temperatures. And so it's very important to get 2 readings, because sometimes one can, I'm not going to say lie, but if you base all of your opinion on just that one thing, you might not be getting a completely accurate reading. And so taking your pulse also is just another great check-in as to what's going on inside your body. It's a great self-test. And so that's all it is. You kind of want that morning temp, or that morning pulse, to be between 75 and 85. That's optimal. And then you always want to make sure your temperatures and your pulses rise according to what you are doing throughout the day. So your morning temperature and your morning pulse should be the lowest of your day, because a good day of eating, a good day of sunlight, a good day of movement, a good day of taking care of your body should continue to raise your metabolic rate throughout the day. So when you get that 40 minutes after breakfast reading, you should have seen that your breakfast affected your metabolism positively. It raised your temperatures. And then that 1 to 3 p.m. reading, you should again see that raise relative to what your morning reading was, because that showed that what you've been doing all day and treating your body really well has raised metabolic function. And when you see those later readings being very, very low, you have to understand that most likely what's going on is stress hormones are playing a huge role in your physiology right when you wake up. And so that breakfast is actually lowering your stress hormones, calming your body down. Or if that, if there's a high temp reading later on in the day where your pulse is racing really fast and your temps are high, that shows that your temps aren't high because of good metabolic function. Your temps are high because you're stressed out. So, that's why taking your pulse and your temperatures matters, because sometimes you can just take your temp and you're like, wow, I'm warm, I'm good, my metabolism's functioning, and then you take that pulse reading and your heart's like boom, 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 you're getting 100 beats per minute. That shows that there's some serious stress. So that's why I think that taking both temps and pulse can be a really good, very helpful indicator of what's going on internally. I'm pretty sure I know the answer here, just making sure I'm not missing something. How do you feel about paid metabolic type testing? I was personally taught that in one of my certification programs that's the way to go, but here's the deal, is getting your metabolic type tested to me is a little bit funny, because it's like, well, what if you were born with a slow metabolism and it's just gotten slower over time? Does that mean you're like a slow oxidizer, or does that mean your metabolism is impaired? You know what I mean? Like, so to say that everyone has a different metabolic type, do we cater to a slow metabolism? Do we tell our bodies like, okay, you refuse to function well, let's just feed you what you want? Or do we say, we're gonna get our metabolic function functioning better so you can become a fast oxidizer and you can have a fast metabolism? You know what I mean? So yeah, I'm sure like everyone's born with remember, like I said, your thyroid function, hormones can be imprinted upon the fetus by the mother. So you can be born with a certain metabolic condition or rate. If your mom had a very fast metabolism, great thyroid function, great progesterone, you're probably going to be born a lot healthier on a metabolic page than somebody that's not. And so I don't know, I think that a lot of people have seen success with it. I just find it, again, like really complicated. Anytime you overcomplicate anything, it just becomes a source of stress instead of a source of empowerment. Like, I don't find, when I like looked at my metabolic type and everything, it like went against everything that I've found about my body, so I was like, well, should I trust what the test says, or should I just trust my own body? And I always choose my body over anything else, because like, for example, my metabolic type is, I want to say like a slow oxidizer. And so they tell me like, you should eat lots of fiber, you should eat lots of beans, lots of grains. And I'm like, dude, I would be constipated and bloated for days. I would also have to eat like literally everyone I would like start craving like to eat anything, because whenever I eat like a vegetarian diet, I'm starving all of the time. Like I could just continue to eat and eat and eat and eat, and I never feel satisfied. So I don't know. I always think that trusting your body over anything else is the most important. Hi, my body seems totally dried out. My nose is dry, skin dry, constipated, but I'm drinking more. What is this? Estrogen dominance? No, that is always a thyroid issue. Whenever you're just dry, your body's not retaining water properly. Remember, when you have low T3, your cells are leaky. Your cells cannot hold on to nutrients, hydration, minerals the proper way. In a healthy metabolism, your body actually will, what's it called? Oh my gosh, evaporate. I'm like, what's that word? Your water will evaporate from your skin. About a liter of water a day will evaporate from your skin if you have a healthy metabolic function. And that evaporation process, and it's like a sweating process, but also evaporation, will actually hydrate your skin, right? If water's being evaporated from your skin, it's hydrating your skin. That does not happen when you are low in minerals, when you have improper metabolic function, low thyroid function. Your body retains as much minerals and as much water as possible. And so the biggest mistake that people make is they start chugging more water. They think like, oh, I'm dehydrated, I gotta chug more water, right? Chug, 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 and they get drier, more dehydrated, because you're flushing out the things that actually help hydrate your cells, which is minerals. And a lot of times when you're under stress or you have metabolic stress, you have a higher need for minerals. So here you are, this double whammy, you're chugging water, flushing minerals out of your body, and then on top of it, your body has a higher need for minerals, and so you're stressing your body out more. So I recommend upping your mineral intake. I really like trace minerals, potassium drops, being liberal with the Himalayan pink salt, and then, you know, when you are, don't drink a bunch of water, plain water. You want to stick to broths, low sugar green juices, very hydrating rich fruits and vegetables. Things are going to bring you water and hydration without just being straight water that's going to flush all those minerals out of you. And a lot of times when we see people with like subclinical hypothyroidism or low T3 syndrome just stop chugging water, they only drink when they're thirsty, you immediately see the extremities warm up, you see people's metabolic function increase, you see hydration increase, so the body's able to regulate its hydration a lot easier and a lot better and more efficiently than someone that's just constantly chugging that water and flushing minerals out of their system. Hey, my 17-OH progesterone is 2.5 nanograms per milliliter. Do you think that's congenital adrenal hyperplasia, or just do you know anything about the condition and how it's treated? I don't know much about congenital adrenal hyperplasia. The only thing that I think is sometimes these wacko names that they come up with, they just like don't know what to call something, or they don't know what something is, so they're just like, let's call it a new name. Let's come up with a fancy name to confuse the shit out of people. 17-OH progesterone is not progesterone. It is I guess a byproduct of making cortisol. And so I hope that when they checked your 17-OH progesterone, they also checked your cortisol, your adrenaline, your prolactin, your PTH levels, all of your stress hormones. Because when 17-OH progesterone is high or low, so is one stress hormone, I promise you. So, you know, they're always never asking the question why, which just boggles me, because I'm like, you know, you have to be slightly smart to become a doctor. I mean, you did have to go to school for a long time. You should have some reasoning skills. You should have some type of smarts in there, and they don't show it. They sometimes are like, let's hide all the smarts and let's be just freaking idiots. And so that requires more digging for sure. And I would make sure all your stress hormones are being checked so that, you know, something's not being bypassed. That's really important. Can you please recommend an organic chlorophyll brand that isn't mint flavored? I've Googled and Googled. Yeah, it's called World Organic Chlorophyll, and it's not mint flavored. They do have a mint flavored one, but I do not like that as well. Ugh. I mean, chlorophyll already has like a slight, it's not horrible, but it's like just like a slight greeny taste. It's a little greeny. And then when you add the mint, it's just like, oh my God, like, ugh, can we not? Could my fixed braces be putting stress on my body and stopping me from hormonal healing? Fixed braces, I'm not sure. Are you just talking about like braces? Because they are metal, and so you have to understand they act like little antennas. Like, hey guys, that's the same for your underwire bras. Please, ladies, don't wear underwire bras. Like, oh my gosh, please. And they attract all the radio waves in the air, all the EMFs in the air, and so it can happen to your teeth as well. But if it's just a temporary thing, obviously there's nothing you can do about it. You want some straight teeth, just bear with it for a little while and then be done, you know. But that's why we don't want like metal close to our body as much as possible. Could I have congenital adrenal hyperplasia and PCOS at the same time? Yes. I mean, that's something you would want to ask your doctor, but you can have PCOS and other conditions as well. What people don't understand about PCOS is it's not a disease, it's a syndrome. And whenever you hear the word syndrome, you guys, you need to understand that they don't understand what the F it is. They just call it a syndrome. So it's a collection of symptoms. When a woman presents with a certain type of symptoms, you're diagnosed with something called polycystic ovarian syndrome. They don't look at it as like what's causing this. They just say like, okay, if you have this, 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 and this, you technically have PCOS. Okay, you have PCOS now. The treatment is this, 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 and this. It's very like cookie cutter and just like they don't think through it at all. Whereas I see the bigger picture. I see, okay, PCOS is a severe metabolic condition that's probably been driving for 15 years before you actually get diagnosed. It's a collection of symptoms of inflammation, estrogen dominance in relationship to progesterone, hypothyroidism, severe stress, and inflammation stemming from gut dysfunction. Those are the 5 factors in PCOS. Those 5 factors can also cause almost every other metabolic syndrome on the planet Earth. Diabetes, adrenal fatigue, adrenal issues, pituitary issues. You know, I could go on and on and on. All of those 5 issues can drive other metabolic conditions as well. And so you have to stop seeing things as individual syndromes. You need to take a step back and realize that anytime you get diagnosed with something, a disease or a syndrome, it's a dis-ease of the body. The body is severely imbalanced and had to compensate for so long that eventually the chain reaction of compensating to try to survive and save you, your life, so you didn't die, was a shift, right? A shift happened. And as these shifts start to happen, the body does start to change out of necessity. It's not your body betraying you. Your body has been trying to keep you alive for years and years and years and years and years. And so eventually you get diagnosed with this and this and this and this, and it's all these different symptoms popping up, which you need to look lower. What's going on? What's the underlying imbalance causing these issues? It's usually liver issues, gut issues, not eating enough, metabolic dysfunction, that kind of thing. So, you know, I always see people that are like, they come to me with like a list long of issues. I got diagnosed with this, 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 and this. I'm like, you guys, from someone who got diagnosed with 17 different medical diagnoses, 17, to having 0. It takes you just restoring balance to your body. Stop focusing on any specific issue and start focusing on the big picture of lowering stress and supporting your body as a whole. And that's where your answer lies, okay? Best form of dairy if it causes acne, if eating it daily. Yeah, so when dairy causes acne, you guys, it's driving inflammation in your body, which shows there's severe imbalance. Probably low progesterone, maybe low thyroid function, most likely small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. That's usually what's caused, because remember, you need progesterone to make lactase enzymes, you need thyroid to make lactase enzymes, and you need the small intestine to be completely sterile. The microvilli, those little finger-like projections that help you digest dairy, need to not be irritated. And so a lot of times when we get bacteria, we're eating excessively rich in fiber diets, our small intestine is wrecked. It's like, oh my gosh, I need a break, please. And so dairy can be inflammatory in that state. So I would recommend starting with this most simplest form of dairy to digest, which is usually grass-fed butter or pastured cream. Cream and butter are the same thing, you guys. Secrets out. So a lot of times people are like, I only eat grass-fed butter, but I do not eat dairy. And I'm like, cream and butter are literally the same thing. So those are where it would start. Maybe if you can't even tolerate those, start with some ghee, and then you would move on to actual milk that has no additives and no gums. I repeat, no additives and no gums. Turn that milk around and make sure it's just milk. And then that's where you would start. And you start with like 2 ounces at lunch, and that's it. Parmesan cheese is also very easy to digest because it's made from A2 cows. It's usually European, so there's not a lot of genetically modified materials, or it's very organic. So that's another one that's pretty easy to digest. Usually most hard cheeses are a lot easier to digest. You're gonna have to experiment because, like I said, though, everybody is very different. But as a rule, usually things like yogurt, ice cream, soft cheese, all those things are pretty difficult to digest if you haven't tolerated dairy in a while. How can you tell if you're digesting food well? What symptoms should you look for to tell if you're not digesting something well? If you're bloated, if you're inflamed, meaning your grip strength, things are puffy, your collarbones aren't showing, you are just feeling bloated. If you bloat after eating, that's a serious sign. If you get nausea, if you are not passing food quickly, like the food should be passed within 24 hours. And the way that you know is you would eat something that's dark colored or something that you will recognize the color, like some beets or some activated charcoal, and see how long it takes through to get to your digestive tract. If you're not passing something till like 48 hours later, there's a problem. There's slow motility there. You need things passing quick. And so, but mostly digestive issues, like if you have diarrhea, constipation, if you're not having regular bowel movements, bloating, floating stools, food in your stool, that kind of thing. You want to make sure bowel movements are regular, everything's broken down, there's no bloating involved, no pain involved, no irritation involved, no rashes involved. It's just all good. but I always say, like, don't make a problem out of something that doesn't exist either. So, you know, I talk a lot about digestion here because a lot of people have problems with digestion. But that doesn't mean that everyone has a problem with digestion. A lot of people do, but not everyone. I thought lower resting heart rate was indicative of cardio fitness. Yeah, but you don't want it to be like so low that you're like, you know, like pumping blood very slowly. You know, everyone in our culture just takes things to extremes, and it just makes me shake my head. Like, people are like, oh, a low resting heart rate is great. And then they're like, the lower the better, you know, let's make sure that our heart just slows down while we sleep. I'm like, no, like, okay, a lower resting heart rate is good, but like, you don't want your heart rate to be like, you know, slow. So you do want it in the lower place. That's why I said 75 to 85 is good, and a little bit less is fine too, but you don't want it to be like so low where you're like, because you want oxygenation happening. You want you want blood flow going. So there is a fine line of balance. Sinusitis symptoms have been ongoing for months now. Any remedy Rex considered to be contribute to Prevotella. I think that's a strain of bacteria or fungus. Usually when people have sinusitis for a very long time, it is due to some kind of fungus. I really like colloidal silver spray, nasal spray. You like, just like a regular nasal spray, it can break down biofilms. It's really antibacterial. Oregano oil, just the regular antibacterials that you would take for like internally. Lauricidin, grapefruit seed extract. And I've always, Dave Asprey from Bulletproof, as much as we don't agree on a lot of stuff, he has a cool sinus rinse. So you could just type in Dave Asprey sinus rinse and it will come up. Other weird experiments you've done, like the red light thing, so cool. Oh, girl. I've been doing this for like 8 years, so I have a lifetime or 8 years of weird stuff that I've tried to share with you guys. That's why I'm starting a YouTube channel, because your mind will be blown. Now, not everything works. Sometimes it's like just an epic fail, but that's part of experimentation. Sorry, my Wi-Fi keeps cutting out. Yeah, like right now I'm also experimenting with taking some aspirin every single day because it's antifungal. It's really anti-inflammatory. It really breaks down process. Okay, sorry, I gotta move because my Wi-Fi is cutting out. So I'm doing that right now. There's a lot of things that I experiment with, but I don't like to always share everything because some things are a little bit crazy, and I'm responsible enough to really know my body, and I'm responsible enough to know when something's not working for me. But some people, they take information on the internet like it's the Bible or like it's like science, and they go crazy with something and they don't really listen to their body while they do it. They don't even know what signs to look for, which is irresponsible. And so like, I don't share everything with you guys because I don't want it to be taken the wrong way and then done in a way that is not being done by a professional. You know what I mean? And I don't mean that to be rude. I just mean that I know what signs to look for to immediately stop if something's not working. Where somebody else might just be like, oh, it's fine, and they end up really hurting themselves. And so to me, I'm just trying to be responsible about it. Finally, got all my doctor visits and blood tests done. All my numbers are in good range as usual. Hormones, thyroid, blood sugars, cortisol, etc. But cholesterol is a bit high. Why might this be? Always a thyroid issue. Where's your actual thyroid numbers at? Because in range thyroid means nothing to me. Should mean nothing to you. Your TSH should be in between 1 and 2. Your T3 should be like around, you want it in a functional range. You don't just want it like at a normal range. And your T4 should also be good. So make sure that the functional ranges are the right thing. You're not just going by what the lab ranges are. That would be the first recommendations when you get your labs back. You want to look for functional ranges. You can Google that. There are plenty of resources for that. Life Extension is a great resource for that. And then make sure that they're in a proper range, because whenever a doctor tells me things are in range, I take that lab test and I go home and I do my own research. So that's part of being your own health advocate. Is there a non-toxic sunless self-tanner, or should I just let that be the thing I do intermittently a few months of the year because it makes me feel good? Yeah, it's one of those things where like there's really not a non-toxic one. That's actually like, I do have a dream of like having starting a company where I develop things like that, where I develop a true, self-tanner that's truly non-toxic. And I don't care how much money it will cost to develop. I really want to create something that's truly non-toxic. There are some non-toxic ones on the market, because I'm a fellow self-tanner lover, and I'm very picky. Like, they don't all work the same. And I'm a huge fan of Bondi Sands, and I think that it develops brown. It doesn't develop orange, and it's not non-toxic for sure. And so it's one of those things where I really realized the difference when I stopped using it, even though I love it. So it's just one of those things where people need to feel what it feels like to go without it for a little while and really see how it affects them and know what to look for. I noticed that my digestion is better, my liver function is better, my periods are better when I don't use self-tanner. And so I've kind of come to the conclusion of I would much rather lay in a low ray UV bed and make some vitamin D while I'm at it to get a slight tan in the winter, and not slather my body with toxins. How much should I worry about alternating areas to apply progesterone cream? You should never worry about something like that. I mean, you can intermittently put it on the other wrist or put it on the other leg, but I wouldn't be okay, I keep a chart. On Tuesdays I apply it to my right thigh, on Thursdays I apply it to my left thigh. There are better things to worry about. Just regularly, switch it up, but don't freak out about it. It will store in your fat, and that's why I always recommend applying it to thin skin. So that's why I always say wrists, girl, always on your wrist. There's your bloodstream right there. Thin skin, there's not a lot of fat there. It won't store up in your fat cells, and avoid putting it on places that are very fatty, that fatty part of your inner thigh. Every girl has a lot of fat there, or should. And so that's probably not the best place to apply it. I always apply it over, I don't use progesterone cream anymore, but I'll apply it over my hip bone right here, because it's a little bit more bony and not so fatty. So you gotta pick some places that are not so fatty on your body and apply it there. But yeah, you don't want it to store in the fat either. Hi, first off, you're so inspiring. My friend and I both love you and look forward to doing Fully Nourished. I'm curious, how can I start healing my gut? I feel overwhelmed with how to do this. Yeah, so, I think a lot of people overcomplicate it. I think a lot of, sorry, I just took a shower, so I'm pulling all my hairs out. I think a lot of people overcomplicate gut healing. They act like it's and I honestly think it's also come from a little bit of a disordered place, you guys. I think that a lot of people on Instagram are using the term healing to hide an eating disorder, and you need to be very self-aware, and you need to be aware of the people that you're following, the girls you're following. Are they actually truly healing their gut, or do they have an eating disorder that is being disguised as, I'm healing my gut, I'm healing this, and they're on a very, very restrictive, very, very limited diet that makes them feel very in control. That's the first thing. You guys need to filter who you're following and who you're looking up to, because a lot of people on Instagram, I'm talking to you guys because I work with a lot of other influencers on Instagram. They're my clients. I find that a lot of them are struggling with their relationship with food. And I'm not going to say they have an eating disorder, but they are very much struggling. They're in a very much restricted place, or almost orthorexic place, and they're teaching that to their followers, or presenting that to their followers, and their followers don't know any better. They think that that's what you need to do to heal your gut, right? You need to be very restrictive, and so their followers might not start off with some kind of disordered eating, but then they eventually develop something similar, right? Because this person is portraying how afraid they are of food, and so other women take that on. And so that's the first thing. You need to really use your discretion when you follow someone that's teaching you a healing diet, because a lot of women are struggling and they aren't aware of it, or they're not sharing it. The next thing is when you start to heal your gut, you need to be very in tune with your body. I always say that your gut is, that gut-brain connection. It's very much your gut tells you everything, right? Your gut is always talking to you, always telling you nope, that's not right, or this is not right. And so the first thing is that mental emotional connection. You need to tune into your gut. If you have gut issues, you're bloating, irritation, pain, you need to tune into where that's happening in your digestive system. Remember that you need to understand where it's happening. Is it stemming from the low belly, stemming from the upper belly? And then go on Google and look at the anatomy of the digestive system and figure out what part of of your intestine is. Is it the large intestine? Is it the small intestine? Is it the stomach? Learn your digestive system. Every woman can do that. You do not have to be a doctor to learn the anatomy of your digestive system, and you should know it before you start healing your gut. A lot of people start talking about gut healing and they don't even know, like, there's a difference between the small intestine, the large intestine, and the stomach, and I'm like, no, you don't even, if you don't know what's going, you don't even know your digestive system, stop trying to heal your digestive system. You don't even know it. You first need to know it. You need to start from the mouth down. So I always say, like, a lot of women are like, oh my gosh, what do I start with? What do I do? And I'm like, start with your mouth. Are you brushing your teeth twice a day at least? Are you scraping your tongue? Are you flossing your teeth? Are you brushing with a non-toxic toothbrush? Are you oil pulling? That's the first step, because the mouth is the flower of the gut. And if your mouth is wrecked, your whole gut's going to be wrecked. So that's the first. Go from mouth all the way to anus. Then you got to get to your stomach. Are you stressed out? Are you producing enough digestive enzymes? Are you making enough hydrochloric acid or stomach acid? Because if you're not, first of all, pathogens are going to be getting into your body because the stomach is the first line of defense. The second thing is that hydrochloric acid and those stomach enzymes are going to, when that food that has been broken down by the stomach, because remember, the stomach's like a pulverizer. It's like a bunch of pounds of pressure. It's crazy. It's like this organ that just could crush your hand, and the acid in there is supposed to be as acidic as battery acid. If it got on your hand, it would burn a hole in your hand. That's how acidic this stomach is. The stomach is a very powerful organ, and so it's going to crush and pulverize your food, and then it'll absorb some through the stomach lining if it's okay, if it's working well, and then that food or that mixture of enzymes and acid will drop into the small intestine. And right at the beginning of the small intestine, that's where the gallbladder is sitting and full of bile from the liver. So the liver just detoxed a bunch of stuff, made some bile, put it into the gallbladder for storage, awaiting for when you ate a fatty meal. And then the bile gets secreted, but the enzymes in your stomach are actually what stimulate the gallbladder to secrete bile. And so if you're not having enough hydrochloric acid and you're not having enough enzymes being produced, and that food drops in, the bile might not secrete. And so bile is what helps you break down fat, in addition to carrying all those old hormones out of the body through the intestine. And so, you know, every process requires a certain thing to happen. And so if you're not starting from the top down, you're starting from whatever, like somewhere down in the depths of your gut, you might take, you know, years to heal instead of 1 year to heal. So I really recommend starting with the mouth, then working on the stomach, then working on the liver, gallbladder, small intestine, and then eventually actually working on the large intestine. And that's why I don't really recommend probiotics until the very end of a gut program, because you don't want bacteria being involved until your body has the mechanisms in place to know exactly what to do with it, or be able to do exactly what it needs to do with it. If you're just introducing a bunch of random strains of bacteria, when your body is already on high alert, it could be actually more damaging than helpful. And so you want to really start with nutrition. You really want to start with a very nutrient-dense diet of foods that you can digest and absorb. Avoid those inflammatory seed oils. You want to avoid inflammatory foods like gluten for the most part. If you don't digest grains or legumes very well, those are kind of out. Anything that you would rub against your skin on your arm, like if you really need to do a test on what would be irritating to your gut lining, remember that your gut lining is very thin, delicate skin that's covered by a mucosal barrier. And so just take that raw bunch of kale and rub it against your skin for about a minute and see if it causes irritation. If it causes irritation on your arm, it's going to be causing irritation in your gut for sure. So you need to really think things through, understand your gut. It's a very delicate, it's a very robust organ when it's working properly, but the minute it starts to break down, it becomes very, very impaired and pathogens start growing. And so you need to kind of take it from the mouth down. The first thing that needs to be focused on is food and stress. Then comes your water intake. Is there chlorine in your water, fluoride in your water? You need to make sure your water's clean because you're drinking water all the time, probably. And then you would move on to exercise because you need to tone the bowel. You need to make sure that you're, massaging the bowel and moving the bowel and it's not getting really, stagnant, and lymphatic flow needs to happen. And then you would move on to actually maybe thinking about some supplements, antibacterial, and that's why I'm going to be creating a gut program after Fully Nourished comes out. But I think Fully Nourished needs to come first because metabolic healing needs to take place in order for food to move through your digestive tract at the proper pace. if things are slowly moving through the gut, no amount of gut work is ever going to help the fact that things are slowly rotting and fermenting in your body. Because remember, your body's 98.6, that's almost 100 degrees, you guys. So think about old chewed up food sitting there, rotting in an almost 100-degree temperatures. Just picture it now. Yeah. So, you know, it needs to first and foremost be moving through the digestive tract at a quick pace, and that requires proper metabolic function. Usually when you just pick up your metabolic function and get your body actually working again, it takes care of a lot of gut issues in itself, but then you also have to do some rebuilding. But first and foremost, gotta heal the metabolism first, and then you would move on to your gut. Thank you, Jessica. I actually realized that starches aren't bad, and cutting them out just worsens hormonal imbalance. I know, isn't that crazy? Starches can have their problems because if you have like gut overgrowth, you're feeding those bacteria, but it's not the starch's fault, it's the bacteria's fault. And so we got to kill that bacteria, we got to get it moved, we got to get it out. Sorry, my Wi-Fi keeps cutting out. And we got to continue to feed yourself well, but that's the first kind of step to healing your gut. Hey, can you explain how you make bone broth with eggshells? Yeah, you just throw those eggshells right in your broth, and that's how you do it. So I usually make like a big pot. I have this like big, I call it my cauldron, because whenever I'm like making my bone broth, I feel like I'm like a witch's brew, because I put like chicken feet in there and bone marrow, bones and eggshells, and I just take like whole bunches of herbs and throw it in. I break up some carrots and put it in. Whatever I have in the fridge that's kind of like going bad, I just throw it in. Onions, garlic, ginger. I really am intuitive about cooking, you guys. I never make it complicated, because I think everyone makes it complicated, and it bugs the shark out of me, because I'm just like, stop making it so complicated. Like, it needs to be easy. And so I make this big pot. I put a splash of apple cider vinegar in there, because that will draw the nutrients and gelatin out of the bones or the chicken feet or whatever you're using, chicken backs, things like that. And then you just let it simmer. You bring it up to a boil first, and then you bring it back down to a simmer, and you just let it simmer for 24 to 48 hours. And for eggshells, I don't really recommend using eggs from just anywhere. They should be pastured eggs like Vital Farms, or they should be like backyard chickens like you bought locally. They shouldn't be just like soy-fed, non-organic eggshells, because that's not gonna be a great source for you, and it's probably gonna be more likely to be contaminated. So a lot of people freak out about like raw eggs and that kind of thing, and I'm like, well, you know, the quality of the eggs matter, because the quality of the chicken matters, and the chicken better have been happy and healthy, or it would have probably been in some kind of disease state. My question was the dries out the body one, and my free T3 came back as 3.58 pmol. Is that okay, as my results are in range? Thyroid results mean nothing, you guys. I will say this over and 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 over again, because you need to be learning how to listen to your body. Are your hands and feet always warm? Are your temperatures always above 97.8? Are your pulses low? Because stress hormones, and I can go down a list of stress hormones, can affect your thyroid test results on a blood test. So unless you got all your stress hormones checked along with your thyroid, you have no idea what stress hormones are impacting your thyroid. And if you have problems, specifically hypothyroid symptoms, there is obviously something wrong. It is not, a test is reliable until it's not. And if your body is telling you something is wrong and a test is saying everything is okay, your body trumps test. Your body trumps the test, because a blood test is a snapshot in time. Do you know if every single time you would go, like let's say you went and got that blood test 3 times a day for 2 weeks straight, do you think the results would be the same every single time? Absolutely not. What you did that day affected that test, your stress levels, if you took a test, an exam, if you had a stressful day at your job, if you ate enough. I mean, I could go down the list. And so this is why I'm always encouraging you, please take your temperatures. Please check your pulses. Please pay attention to if your hands are warm. Please pay attention to if your hair is falling out, or you have hirsutism, or if you have acne, because all of those signs are pointing to that something is off. And I'm not saying it has to be a thyroid issue. It can be a million other issues. But if you have straight hypothyroid symptoms, or you have high stress hormones, which can absolutely suppress your thyroid function, even if they come back on the lab test normal, you are going to experience hypothyroid symptoms. And dries out the body. You know, it will dry out the body. But that could also just be a severe mineral imbalance. Potassium, magnesium, calcium, sodium, yeah. I'm just making sure because I know there's 5 that I always talk about. But yeah, sodium, potassium, magnesium, calcium, zinc, iodine, selenium, those types of minerals, but specifically sodium and potassium are going to be your BFF alongside of calcium and magnesium. And if you are constantly dry, specifically in your feet or hands, you need to make sure that your mineral intake is very high. I'm talking about high, like liberally salting your foods, making sure you're getting adequate potassium in, doing eggshell calcium, or making sure you're getting adequate amounts of dairy, making sure that you're getting plenty of magnesium that you can absorb. Because a lot of people are like, well, I'm eating plenty of leafy greens, and I'm like, yeah, but if you're eating raw leafy greens, good luck breaking the magnesium down from raw leafy greens. They need to be cooked really well, or they need to be put into a broth. So, and you need to like excessively drink that broth. So, you know, I would look into mineral intake. If you're pretty sure that your thyroid is all good and your stress hormones are all good, then the next thing I would check out is minerals. But if you know you have a stress issue, whether that's adrenaline, cortisol, prolactin, that kind of thing, then you most likely have suppressed thyroid function, because regardless of where your tests are at, stress hormones directly suppress the metabolism throughout your day. Hi, is it possible to have 16 millimeter dominant follicle but no ovulation after 4 days? If so, will that become a cyst? I'm not really sure, you guys. I think that the excessive stress over the millimeters of your follicle is kind of funny, honestly. Like the fact that people can't, like doctors can't focus on anything but like the size of your follicle. Like, I'm like, that is really not enough. It could be, honestly, but stop worrying about things you cannot control. You cannot control the size of your follicle. What you can control is how well you eat, how well you treat your body, if you move every day, if you get outside, if you're stretching every day, making sure things aren't stagnant, your muscles aren't tight, your spine isn't tight, making sure you're not sedentary all day, making sure you're not in a very depressing relationship, making sure you're getting out and doing things you enjoy. Those are all things that you can control. The things that you can't control is the millimeters of your follicle. So, and you can't control if it is going to turn into a cyst. So stop worrying about things you cannot control and start worrying about things that you can absolutely are 100% in your control. And the reason I say that, and might sound harsh, is because when we start to excessively obsess about things that are out of our control, it leads to negativity, it leads to worry, it leads to reclusivity, meaning that we're gonna stay inside because we're just so crippled by our misery. Like, oh my God, I have a 16 millimeter follicle, I can't ovulate anymore. Yes, you can. Your body just might not be ready this cycle around. Does that mean you're never gonna ovulate again? No, it just means it's not ready yet. Keep working. Remember, you guys, I always encourage you to remember the 100-day wait is a real thing, meaning that it takes 100 days from a dormant follicle in your ovary to become a full ovulated mature egg. 100 days. And your health during that 100 days will affect how that happens at the very end, that grand finale. And so you do have to be very consistent and very committed to lowering stress and nourishing your body for 100 days before you start obsessing about the progress that hasn't been made. And be real with yourself. A lot of people are like, well, I've waited 6 months. And I'm like, what did you do in the past 6 months? And they're like, well, I tried raw veganism one time, and then I did this like 6-week fast, and then like, and I'm like, no, you didn't actually start like your healing journey and nourishing your body and giving it what it needs until 3 weeks ago. So you have to be real with like when you actually started your journey, and then really be consistent with it and give it 100 days. And then if you're still having problems, hang in there, because just because it's been one journey from dormant follicle to ovulation doesn't mean that's always enough. So give it time. But it could be possible to have a 16 millimeter dominant follicle but no ovulation, but it's also possible for that to have been an ovulation, or it will be an ovulation. So don't really super focus on those things that you can't control, because it can be very, very overwhelming. I'm not gluten intolerant. Should I eat gluten-free to help with my PCOS anyways? I think that every woman is gluten intolerant, or to a point. Gluten is inflammatory. It's a trypsin inhibitor, so it really wrecks the gut, and PCOS almost always has gut issues, small intestinal inflammation. I recommend being majority, if not fully, gluten-free for all of my clients. I personally won't touch gluten with a 10-foot pole because I see how it affects my mood, it affects my period. If I eat it once during my cycle, I have a way worse period than if I avoid it. So I haven't really eaten it very often in probably 5 years. Like sometimes I'll have some sourdough bread, if that, but I really avoid gluten at all costs. And I see that most of my clients, when they do, they feel so much better, and not just digestive wise, it's mood wise, it's inflammation wise, it's hormone wise, it's symptom wise, because gluten can affect the way that your body's detoxifying, because if your small intestine is reabsorbing estrogens because it's inflamed or not functioning properly, or food isn't moving through the digestive tract properly, inflammation and impairment to detoxification can occur. So I don't necessarily mean that you have to like avoid it like the plague, but I wouldn't make it a part of your everyday diet. Like if it's something that comes in on the weekends, great, but I wouldn't like eat it constantly. Thank you, Jessica. I actually saw a lot of improvement with my symptoms after starting to eat starches again. You're welcome. To heal subclinical hypothyroid, is protein, carbs, and fat at every meal the way forward, and any other advice? Yeah, so you gotta find what foods are actually supportive metabolically to you. That's why like temperatures is a great tool to use, because you can see if like after a meal, if your temperatures are going down, that shows that your stress levels are high. And so it's gonna maybe take some time before stress hormones stay low, and you can actually see meals start to raise your temperatures, which shows that they're pro-thyroid or pro-metabolic. So I really recommend starting with the protein, carb, fat at every meal. And then also just, liver support is very important. Getting the gut really in a great shape is very important for thyroid issues, regardless of if you have subclinical or diagnosed hypo, diagnosed hyper, or Hashimoto's or Graves'. It doesn't matter. You still need to be focused on the liver and the gut. And then in addition, like a really healthy lifestyle, like making sure chemicals are low, what you're putting on your skin really matters, making sure you're not around tons of cleaning products, the light you're exposed to really matters. Like it's very important to get enough sunlight every day, or red light therapy, or some kind of light therapy, especially if you live in a place where it's very dark and you're not getting a lot of sunlight on your skin. But yeah, and that's kind of my favorite way, is just consistently eating 4 to 5 times a day, protein, carb, and fat, and supporting your liver before you go to bed. So making sure your liver has enough sugar to get you through the night without having to raise stress hormones to make glucose. And so like a way you can do that is just a cup of tea with some raw honey and some coconut oil before you go to bed. So should we not wear certain jewelry if we shouldn't be wearing underwire? That's really your choice. I personally will never completely cut out jewelry, but underwire is specifically harmful because it's sitting underneath your breast and it's sitting near your lymphatic system all day long. And some women even wear their underwire bras to bed, which I'm like, why? Like the minute I get home, I rip my bra off, regardless of if I wear underwire or not. But yeah, it's specifically because the breast tissue is so sensitive, and it's sitting in that very sensitive area, which is like right by your lymphatic, you have 2 lymph nodes right in that armpit underneath the breast area. But if you're afraid of jewelry, then I understand that as well, but I kind of choose my battles there, and I won't cut off jewelry. Pee recently has been clear, even though adding trace minerals and lots of salt. Sorry, my Wi-Fi keeps cutting out. Any ideas why peeing so much and it is completely clear? Are you over drinking water? Are you drinking a lot of water? That could be the first thing that I'm thinking. But yeah, I'm not really sure. In the past, you mentioned that test results should indicate which virulence factor my H. pylori is, and that would indicate appropriate treatment. I'm negative for all factors. Have I caught it early? Yeah, that would indicate most of the time that you've caught it pretty early. The more virulence factors that have developed, most likely the more the H. pylori has kind of settled in. Because remember that H. pylori usually starts at the bottom of the stomach, because that's the most, it's most likely to develop there because it's the easiest for it to kind of take up residence. Because remember, the way H. pylori works is that you most likely have low stomach acid from the very beginning. That's how H. pylori kind of makes its way into the stomach in the first place, because H. pylori could never exist in a stomach that had full hydrochloric acid and digestive enzyme function. It would not let H. pylori through. And so what happens is we usually have low hydrochloric acid in the first place. Hydrochloric acid isn't acidic enough so that H. pylori can kind of take up residence, and they're like a corkscrew bacteria, so they corkscrew into the walls of the stomach and they start secreting ammonia, and ammonia reacts with the hydrochloric acid and it becomes like flat, neutral. It neutralizes stomach acid. And so as your H. pylori develops, you see more and more digestive issues stemming from low stomach acid, because it was probably already low in the beginning, like slightly low, but then as H. pylori has taken up residence, it's making it lower and lower and lower because it's neutralizing your stomach acid. So, and then long story short is the H. pylori can start to get up into the upper chambers of the stomach and the upper parts of the stomach, and then at that point can actually sometimes cause like GERD and high stomach acid and things like that. And so, that's why the virulence factors are important, because you can actually see like, okay, I might still have low stomach acid, or actually, probably do have like high stomach acid now at this point in H. pylori. It usually takes about 18 months of an H. pylori infection to start creating high stomach acid. What do you think about pork? Some experts advise against it, but it doesn't seem logical, to be honest. Yeah, I'm not like anti or pro. You do have to understand, like, most pigs nowadays are fed absolute crap because pigs are omnivores. They'll eat just about anything. And so unfortunately we live in this world where people don't take care of their animals. I mean, just because you're going to eat an animal doesn't mean you don't love it and care for it and treat it like it deserves to be treated. Like, you're allowed to truly love and care for animals and eat them too, and so we live in this really sick world where animals are just treated like absolute dirt. And unfortunately, pigs are fed very poorly in most places unless you get specifically pasture raised pork. I personally won't touch pork that is not high quality. There's certain animals that I'll be okay with once in a while, but pork to me is out because it is such a sensitive animal, and it's also very proliferant in parasites if it's not fed correctly. And so you very regularly can get parasites from pork. And it's also like if the pork is not fed well, it can actually have like it can be very inflammatory in its fatty acid profile. Like I talked about polyunsaturated fats. If a pig is fed soybean and soybean oil its whole life, its fat is going to be mostly soybean oil. And so that's not healthy to eat because you're going to be eating pretty much straight soybean oil. So you do need to care about what your animals are eating, and specific animals are dirty than others. Poultry and pork are way dirtier than ruminant animals. Do you know why saturated fats give me acid? What can I do? You might not digest them well. Hydrochloric acid is important, like I said. Whenever somebody's hormonally imbalanced or really stressed out, or stress is driving their conditions, they end up really not being able to digest food very well. Their hydrochloric acid and digestive enzyme function is quite low. I really like Swedish bitters or digestive bitters, or apple cider vinegar, or some apple cider vinegar mixed with baking soda to kind of get to stimulate digestive function. Congenital adrenal hyperplasia is hereditary. Asked a question about it before, so I'm not sure I can make an impact on it. What do you think? Anytime someone says my condition is hereditary, I give them the middle finger and I say, watch this. And like give it a year, give it 2 years, and you really buckle down and take care of yourself. And if you still have it in a year or 2 years, it most likely won't bother you as much. You know, being diagnosed with a condition doesn't mean you have to struggle with the symptoms of the condition. I've seen that again and again in myself. I've been diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome, lupus, Hashimoto's, celiac disease, you know, a million things. And I don't really struggle with the symptoms of those things though. So just because I was diagnosed doesn't mean it's my destiny. And even though autoimmunity is hereditary in my family. Treatment for halitosis caused by H. pylori outside of floss, rinse, oil pulling. Rinse with tea tree oil and oregano oil. I'm not a huge fan of like essential oils internally, so don't swallow them. But rinsing with them can be very antibacterial. Also colloidal silver, again, a rinse of that can be very helpful. But yeah, if you have like bad halitosis, it can be because of the bacteria. Also, rinsing with raw milk, if you can get your hands on raw milk in where you live, can be very helpful because raw milk has a lot of bacteria that can help kind of crowd out the bad bacteria. And it can also kind of really heal the enamel of the teeth. Are there any issues with taking a baby aspirin daily? I'm super interested in experimenting with it. I personally haven't. There are people that like have treated their cancer with high dose aspirin. Like it's very powerful. And I have been trying the Jerry Care from Amazon. It's just starch and aspirin. The thing you want to look out for with aspirin is all the additives. So like red dye number whatever and like all the additives. So I bought one on Amazon that was just starch and aspirin, which is like acetylsalicylic acid. It's very antifungal, anti-inflammatory. Some people say they experience stomach issues, but you shouldn't take it on an empty stomach. You should take it after eating anyways. But I don't see a problem with it. It's like one of those things where a lot of people like scare you into like not wanting to experiment on your own body, and I'm like, what's the worst that's gonna happen? You're gonna not like it and you're gonna stop it? Like, it's not gonna kill you.